This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Let's go ahead and take a moment to go back to the weekend right before the king visited the United States. It's Saturday night, April 25th, 2026, and President Trump is at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Out of nowhere, chaos, gunshots, a literal assassin tries to take out the president and the whole presidential line of succession. The Secret Service is swarming. It's absolute terrifying madness. The media has the entire country on edge. We're reminded once again that there is a massive violent target on the back of the America First movement. But then, what happens just a few days later on Tuesday?
Mr. Speaker, Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla.
Enter King Charles III, an unelected billionaire wearing a shiny crown, flying across the ocean from a tiny island, walking into the United States Congress. He's there to talk about the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Remember that document, the one where we told his family to go pound sand?
I would like, if I may, to take this opportunity to express my particular gratitude to you all for the great honor of addressing this joint meeting of Congress, and on behalf of the Queen and myself, to thank the American people for welcoming us to the United States to mark this semi-quincentennial year of the Declaration of Independence. And for all of that time, aren't you lucky?
What we're all missing under these pleasantries was he wasn't there to celebrate America. He literally was there to give us orders. King Charles was sent to attempt to normalize the relations between the UK and US for obvious reasons. And what I mean by that, if you don't speak swamp or you don't speak World Economic Forum, you might have thought this was just a nice, polite speech of the reigning monarch from the UK. It wasn't. What I saw was a perfectly crafted, highly calculated undermining on Donald Trump and the entire America First movement. This whole state visit from the UK side was meticulously planned and executed. And what we saw, and quite a lot of Americans bought into this illusion that the crown loves and supports this country. Now, if you notice, during Charles's trip, the media on both sides, right and left, had been extremely glowing and positive over the success of the state visit. And I would have to agree, the optics that was presented was overwhelmingly positive, as well as, entertaining to a certain extent. But we, as the 99%ers, don't understand that there is a different kind of language that people in that class speak. And it's not through words, it's through symbolism. There were all kinds of symbols being presented that gave an indication as to really the temperature of this relationship. Today, we're going to decode the secret messages hidden in this speech and expose the globalist trap they're trying to set us up for, and how Donald Trump was able to counter it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I offer a toast to 250 years of American freedom, and very importantly, to a great man, His Majesty King Charles III. Thank you very much.
Now, while the Democrats and Republicans were giving this king a standing ovation in Congress, if you really listen closely to the carefully worded speech, essentially he's saying the power is not in Donald Trump's hands. It's with you guys. You are the ones who decide how the American taxpayer money gets spent. In watching this speech now a few times, I have to say that the way Charles used words and phrases, it's no wonder how so many people have fell for this so-called facade that we have been watching. Thanks to Harry and Meghan, we have been able to see through some of that. And in this case, it's no different, especially with a lot of the words that we heard throughout this speech were very familiar to what we hear when Harry and Meghan speak. Let me go ahead and start off with the pros. I'm going to give it to King Charles. I think that this was a masterfully written speech that was polished, it was historically rich, and strategically warm. Yeah, I think King Charles did a good job delivering the speech with the quiet authority of a constitutional monarch. He knows his role, not to make policy, but to embody that continuity that they talk about, and to emphasize the special relationship that we have. Delivered here to this joint session of Congress during our 250th anniversary year, it essentially was a love letter to the transatlantic alliance, wrapped in nothing but gratitude, shared heritage, and all throughout the speech, gentle reminders that there is a dependence during these dangerous times, essentially saying, don't leave us kind of thing. But before we get into the breakdown, do the kid a favor. If you're sick and tired of these foreign elites telling us what to do, go ahead and hit that like button right now and double check to make sure that you're subscribed. As you know, every little bit helps to spread awareness because these people cannot win. All right, let's get into it. So Charles gets up to the podium. And what's the first propaganda tactic he uses? He connects all of us through emotion, reminding us about how volatile this world is, and then bringing up the incident that happened during the weekend, which was the attempted assassination.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we meet in times of great uncertainty, in times of conflict from Europe to the Middle East, which pose immense challenges for the international community and whose impact is felt in communities the length and breadth of our own countries. We meet too in the aftermath of the incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed.
So now what you notice here is he is making a connection with the audience, invoking an emotional reaction when mentioning this third assassination attempt that happened. But if you notice, Charles makes no mention of the stabbing that occurred that same day in his own country, where 2 Jewish people had been brutally attacked in London. No mention, not even a post on social media saying they condemn the acts of anti-Semitism. In fact, barely any media reported on this. This goes to show you how controlled the media is in the UK. Although really important news here, does anybody think that Charles and Starmer would want this news dominating the headlines over the state visit? No. I'm pointing this out because I want you to understand the power of media influence. The only reason why I'm aware of this travesty is because Lauren the Insider was reporting on it. This just goes to show you why independent journalism is so important. Yeah, it's disappointing that Charles didn't say anything but had to bring up what happened that past Saturday. And that was done specifically to evoke emotion from the Americans. Because in the end, this was about keeping the status quo and pressing on with globalism.
Whatever our differences, whatever disagreements we may have, we stand united in our commitment to uphold democracy.
And there is that word, democracy. He starts talking about the Magna Carta. Now, for those that don't remember or don't know, the Magna Carta is a historic 1215 charter of rights that was agreed to by King John of England, in which it limited royal power and established foundational principles of individual liberties, like due process and rule of law. So essentially, it was a bunch of rich barons telling the king, hey, you can't just do whatever you want. You have limits. Charles gets up there and says, oh, your American liberty comes from us. It comes from English law. And he goes into citing that the Supreme Court used the Magna Carta X amount of times. And referencing Congress is wonderful because decisions aren't made by the will of one person, referencing a so-called king or the president. It's done by many. And that's why you had everybody clapping in the room. This wasn't just a history lesson. This was a direct, pointed insult aimed at Donald Trump in a very British and subtle way. I mean, let's go back to the beginning of this video. Think about the timing. Donald Trump literally just survived another assassination attempt. We, the people, voted him back into clean house, drain the swamp, close the borders, and slap tariffs on countries that are ripping us off. To do that, a president needs to use executive power. This is why we voted Donald Trump in, because we want him to take strong action. King Charles is standing in our Capitol, looking at our Congress, and using subtle phrasing to say, don't let Trump be in charge. Stop him. Limit his power. Tie his hands. He is reminding them that Trump is not a king with absolute power, which subconsciously sets the foundation for the rest of this speech. And I don't think it was lost on Donald Trump. You have a monarch speaking to a republic, basically saying, we invented the limited government, so make sure you use it to stop the guy the American people just voted for. That's how I interpret it. This goes back to saying that the royal family is very good at using language. Do you see how sneaky that is? They don't just come out and say, we hate Trump. They use fancy words and, manipulation tactics. I mean, look at how the Queen called Meghan Markle a liar with that one-line statement. Our recollections may vary. You don't get any better than that. But moving on, this is where I almost lost my mind. King Charles actually brings up Henry Kissinger. Yeah, that evil demon, Henry Kissinger.
Our two nations have built over the centuries, and for which we are profoundly grateful to the American people, is truly unique. And that alliance is part of what Henry Kissinger described as Kennedy's soaring vision of an Atlantic partnership based on twin pillars, Europe and America. That partnership, I believe, Mr. Speaker, is more important today than it has ever been.
Mentioning Kissinger was not an accident here. Not only was he an intel asset for the British government, but he was also the ultimate Washington swamp creature. And let's not forget Klaus Schwab's mentor. This is the same guy that was once quoted as saying, if you can control the food production, you can control the population. Charles goes ahead and quotes Kissinger talking about an Atlantic partnership and how we need twin pillars of Europe and America. Why is this British king quoting an American swamp creature? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because he wants to legitimize endless wars and endless spending. Charles looks right at our politicians, the people whose salaries we pay, and demands unyielding resolve for Ukraine. Now, the thing that irritated me, I think, the most out of this whole speech was Charles telling Congress to ignore the clarion calls to become ever more inward-looking. Inward-looking. Let's pause right there. Let's talk about what that phrase actually means. When a globalist billionaire says inward looking, what they really mean is America first. They mean make America great again. They mean nationalism. They mean taking care of your own house before you fix the neighbor's house. To King Charles, you wanting your taxpayer dollars to go to your local schools or your local roads or securing the southern border of the United States, to him, that's inward looking. And he thinks that's not good. And he thinks it's dangerous. He is framing the defense of Ukraine and the endless black hole funding of NATO as some kind of holy moral duty. He's literally trying to guilt trip us. kindly reminding us that we fought shoulder to shoulder in World War II and 9/11, so you have to keep funding that laundromat. No, we don't. The American people explicitly voted in 2024 to stop being the world's ATM machine. We voted to stop funding endless foreign wars that have nothing to do with our security and safety. And the absolute nerve of King Charles, he actually quoted Donald Trump. He praised Donald Trump's quote about the UK and US having a priceless and eternal bond. Now, you know, using Donald Trump's own words is a chance to stroke Donald Trump's ego. Does King Charles necessarily believe that? No. He took Trump's own words and tried to use them to force Trump to do the exact opposite of what Trump promised his voters, or at least try to persuade. Now, do I think that this visit helps soften the tension between the US and UK? Yeah, I think to a certain degree, but not to the place that the UK government is wanting it to go, which is going back to the way things were when Joe Biden was in office. That's not going to happen. And this all points back to this one world vision that these globalists have been pressing for. You can't talk about King Charles without talking about the World Economic Forum and this UN Agenda 2030. You just can't. And sure enough, right in the middle of Congress, Charles is firm with keeping the globalist agenda front and center and moving forward. In this speech, he starts talking about the disastrously melting ice caps of the Arctic and the collapse of critical natural systems. He tells us we have to safeguard nature. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for this. This is not about planting trees. This is not about picking up litter in your neighborhood. This is pure Agenda 2030 UN SDG language. When these elites talk about climate action and sustainability, what they're really talking about is control. It is a rebranded socialist agenda. It means global governance. It means they want to control what kind of car you drive. They want to control what kind of stove you cook on. They want to control how much meat you're allowed to eat, and ultimately control how many people get to live on this planet. I mean, haven't you noticed that every man-made crisis that these people create, they somehow tie it back to the climate? They literally want to crush American energy independence and force us into this green transition that is literally crushing the entire Europe continent with this insanity. Charles also started throwing around those words like praising our diverse and free societies. While Charles mentioned Christianity in the beginning of his speech to pander to the Republicans, he later on then ignored the deep national Christian heritage of America. And instead, what we saw was him pushing the woke, globalist religion of interfaith, where all borders are erased and everyone just holds hands and gets along with respecting Islam. I mean, he didn't necessarily say Islam, but we knew what he was referring to.
And, Mr. Speaker, for many here, and for myself, the Christian faith is a firm anchor and daily inspiration that guides us, not only personally, but together as members of our community. Having devoted a large part of my life to interfaith relationships and greater understanding, it is that faith in the triumph of light over darkness which I have found confirmed countless times. Through it, I am inspired by the profound respect that develops as people of different faiths grow in their understanding of each other.
It's all liberal, progressive word salad dressed up in a royal accent. I have to give it to Charles. His delivery also sells this kind, compassionate message, which we all know that interfaith is not possible when you have Islamists who want to kill you. That's just, the reality of things. And the Democrats in the room, they were eating it up. They gave this guy standing ovations because he was reading directly from their playbook. It was like music to their ears. They don't give a shit about Americans. They care about lining their own pockets. But the worst part about the whole speech that I found, not only blood boiling, but also comical at the same time, is how ridiculous these people are. The hypocrisy of King Charles lecturing America about how to run a country. Charles is standing there in his expensive suit talking about renewal and shared prosperity and compassion. You know how Harry and Meghan love that word compassion. But back home, the whole country's falling apart. So to come here and to preach that as if our shared values reflect what UK shared values are, with all of that mess going on, is completely delusional. The world knows and can see with their own eyes that the UK is currently being run by a communist dictator named Keir Starmer. And under him, the UK right now is a disaster. Can you believe Charles bragged to Congress about how Britain is doing this massive increase in defense spending? With what money?
You must be very alarmed by the front page of The Times today. This is a warning from General Sir Richard Barrons, a former military chief. He is warning that Britain's armed forces can only think about preparing for war, as a lack of funding has left no money for brand new weapons until 2030.
The reality is the British military right now is struggling, and Starmer is scrambling to find money. The economy in the UK is totally stagnant, and they have a massive budget hole. From the looks of it, it looks like the UK is broke. Not as broke as the US, but, they're also having some financial difficulties. And it does seem like the taxpayer is going to be squeezed even more. And remember all that climate stuff King Charles was preaching on about, safeguarding nature, blah, blah, blah. Well, look what happened when the UK forced their radical green agenda on its own people. Energy bills skyrocketed. Regular working class British people literally cannot afford to heat their homes in the winter. And factories had to shut down because electricity was too expensive. That is the compassion that he wants to bring here for all of us. He talked about the beauty of diversity and the living mosaic. Right. Have you seen the news out of the UK lately? They have record numbers of illegal migrants arriving on small boats. Social cohesion is completely gone. Their hospitals and welfare systems are collapsing under the weight of people who shouldn't even be there. The reality that we see here is that the UK economy is barely growing, and taxes, for whatever reason, continue to go through the roof while wages remain flat. But here we have this unelected king, a guy who lives in literal palaces. Family has billions of dollars, comes into our house and politely tells us that we need to do more. More or less throughout this speech, talking about our shared values, our shared commitments, essentially saying you need to continue to keep funding this globalist vision. So what was this speech really about? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was the globalist establishment panicking. They saw Donald Trump get reelected. They saw that the American people have woken up, and they saw that we don't want to pay for their globalist club anymore. Period. Now, the way that I see it, what they did was they rolled out their fanciest weapon, the British monarchy. I believe, really, Charles was sent there to reassure the deep state and the Washington insiders. He was sent there to say, don't worry, guys. Keep fighting Trump. Keep funding the wars. The old order is still alive. They took the spirit of 1776, a rebellion against an overbearing, out-of-touch king who taxed us, and then they tried to flip it upside down. They tried to use a king to tell us to accept being taxed to death for foreign countries. Isn't that something? Alliances are fine. Trading with the UK is fine, but it has to be on our terms. Charles's idea of an eternal bond is only real if American taxpayers is the one carrying the heavy load. We get the bill, and we get the guilt trip, while they line their pockets. The real enemies here are the British imperialists, including the king himself. I'm not saying that Charles is a bad man. It's just he has this vision of how the world needs to be, and that does not allow for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It just doesn't. They try to hide behind the so-called special relations banner while covertly destabilizing America from within. I mean, it can't be any more obvious that the king's son is over here doing the actual dirty work. Charles wouldn't come to the United States to be confrontational or combative. And Donald Trump wouldn't invite King Charles and Queen Camilla here just to humiliate them. No, this was about setting the tone for the future of American dominance, American greatness, and changing of power. Essentially, that's what it was. Like the whole bees, I mean, did anybody pick up on that? It's well known that bees are very important to the royal family. It goes back centuries. There's an old European folk tradition called telling the bees, where beekeepers would inform their hives about major life events like deaths, marriages, or departures, believing bees were spiritually connected to their caretakers and needed to be kept, so-called in the loop, to stay healthy and productive. This custom actually happened when Queen Elizabeth passed away, and her bees were told that the mistress had died and that King Charles was now their new master. When we look at this photo, some say that this was telling the bees that there's a new order that the world is going to see. And this is all part of America's golden age. Now, can we say that the trip was successful for Charles? Oh yeah, absolutely. The optics look brilliant. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was able to do a little business while he was in New York trying to fundraise for his charities and meeting up with all those wealthy CEO globalists like CEO of Pfizer, CEO of Bank of America. Yeah, I mean, the old boys club is not going anywhere. But for the United States, we're not going back to the way that we were. And that is a good thing. Even though Charles tried, I don't see us going back to the way things were unless another Democrat gets into office. And that's why we need to be very focused on the midterms. But these are just my opinions. Overall, yes, I do think that the trip was extremely successful. Do I think we're now best friends again? No. I do think Trump does have a respect for the royal family. But at the same time, he's still putting America first. Now, I don't think he's going to embarrass the royal family with Harry. Something will be done about him. It's not going to be a full-out scandal. I honestly can see Harry going home with his tail between his legs and the PR spinning some BS story like what we're seeing now of him being so homesick that he has to go home, and the palace is in control of managing and controlling that narrative. As it stands now, things do appear to be up in the air for Prince Harry here in America. And it's all going to come down to what's in those Department of State files, which is something that I think is going to change how we see this whole story. That's what I firmly believe, but we're just going to have to wait and see. It will be interesting to watch over the next couple of weeks to see if Harry's going to get his security back, because chances are if he gets his security back, then a lot of the stuff in those files won't be released. Anyhow, those are just some of my thoughts, but definitely let me know what you think. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe, and I will talk to you later. Bye!
Sometimes in history, there's this magic moment. Somebody appears on the scene, and everything changes.
I am with you.
We've never seen anything like this.
I will fight for you.
This was a man who's met his destiny.
And I will win for you.
He said he was saved by God in order to make America great again.
His victory was the greatest comeback of all time. You're watching history, so buckle up.
I don't think the American people have ever seen this before. A government that has moved this quickly and a president that has done so much when it comes to the border and energy and major investments from other countries. It's like warp speed.
47's on a hot streak, bringing head-snapping change to Washington, overwhelming the system with a volcanic eruption of action. Trump has a mandate from the people, and he's using it, and they're just getting started.
President Trump said on the campaign trail, success will be my retribution.
Despite the best efforts of those who would try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do what I'm doing.
America's back, common sense is back. He is keeping his promise to you, the American people.
Inflation is down, growth is up.
The numbers don't lie. The economy is soaring.
Lowest gas prices in 4 years.
And record tariff revenue.
The USA is on a roll, culminating in the signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill on July 4th.
The Trump economic golden age is full steam ahead.
America is back, thanks to the courage of President Trump, thanks to the leadership of his amazing cabinet, and thanks, of course, to our brave men and women in the United States military.
This is a message to the rest of the world. The days of ripping off America and Americans are officially over.
Between the attacks on Iran's nuke site and the Maduro operation, the U.S. military recruitment at an all-time high.
This president will go down in history as a peacemaking president.
Peace through strength. America's in charge.
And he's just got one filter, and that is America first.
Whatever they're doing, it's working. Zero illegal crossing, drug cartels frustrated, less crimes.
We have the most secure border in the history of this nation. If you think we're doing good now, you just wait till this coming year.
The president isn't taking his foot off the gas in 2026.
It's a new year. The stock markets are already making new record highs.
The Trump archive are a series of near impossible feats.
As for the next year, the American people have so much to look forward to. The president will continue to build off of his historic accomplishments.
2025 was setting the table, but the banquet's going to be in 2026.
This is the golden age coming.
He says, make America great again because every American is invited.
My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future because the golden age of America has only just begun.